All right, good afternoon. My name is Matthew Lowry. I'm going to be responding to the affirmative side in this, where they are proposing that we ban fracking in environmentally sensitive areas. Their first secondary claim included the fact, or the claim at least, that fracking pollutes groundwater and harms the local ecosystem. I'm going to be responding to her claims in order. This, however, there's a lot of debate around this, obviously. But there's been a lot of instances where this has actually been proven not to be the case. For example, in instances where methane has been found in drinking water, even when this happened in areas where fracking and other drilling operations were taking place, it was often found to be associated with other more natural causes. For instance, in an article by Sumner Thomas from the Society for Science and the Public, they found that when there's fracking in Carroll County, which is in Ohio, they had a large amount of methane that occurred in some of the drinking water in the area. And initially, they thought it was because of the fracking, because there's been a lot of fear about it. However, researchers from Stanford University reported as of October 19th that the contamination actually came from natural biological sources, such as soil bacteria and leaky gas wells, so not associated with fracking at all. Similarly, fracking has not been shown to introduce any other fluids or gases into the water table, and this is for a number of reasons. She gave you the definition of fracking, but it's important to understand that this is not happening at the same levels as the natural reservoirs are from which we get our drinking water. Typically, fracking occurs as far as 2,000 to 3,000 meters underground, more than a mile, and this is more than 3 times the distance below where where drinking water is actually drawn from. According to Howarth Robert in an article in the Nature magazine titled "Should Fracking Stop?" The Groundwater Protection Council, which is a nonprofit organization of state groundwater and underground injection control, that's the agency, headquartered in Oklahoma City, has found no instance in which injected fluid from fracking has actually contaminated groundwater. Similarly, Robert Jackson, in an annual review of environmental and resources article titled "The Environmental Costs and Benefits of Fracking," stated that there has been no evidence found for increased salts, metals, or radioactivity in the drinking water homes within 1 mile of fracking for specifically shale gas wells, which are the ones typically associated with fracking. And as I said before, fracking typically occurs at approximately 1,000 to 3,000 meters below the surface. And in practice, this occurrence, the actual rising of these fluids, these gases, these heavy metals to the surface is unlikely because of the fact that it is so much farther underground and the fluids are not likely to actually rise up. So, and this is largely not only because fluids don't typically rise up, but also because microseismic data has shown that man-made hydrofractures, which would be what transports that fluid, rarely propagate more than 600 meters. So going beyond that, I would also like to talk about her claim that, or the association that a lot of the chemicals and water used in fracking have extremely dangerous chemicals in them. The truth of the matter is that a lot of the water that is already down there at that level has a lot of different, it often has isotopes in it, radioactive isotopes. You'll have heavy metals, things like that can be dangerous, but proper disposal and recycling of this water is actually all that's really necessary, not the banning of fracking. New fracking technologies are also being introduced on a yearly basis that are much more environmentally friendly. According to Patrick Kiger in a National Geographic article, there's a James Hill, who is the chief executive officer for a company called GasFrac, is one of many companies that has introduced a new fracking method that uses no water at all. Instead, they're actually using propane, which is a hydrocarbon that's already naturally present underground, and a combination of what it says are relatively benign chemicals such as magnesium oxide and ferric sulfate, a chemical used in water treatment plants. So this just goes to show that there are a lot of methods being implemented to reduce the harm, at least the potential for harm within fracking. And because of these, especially if the system encourages the use of this by these companies, it is much less likely that any environmental harm will come from them. And also a big issue is methane methane leaks. However, in the same article by Patrick Kiger, they found that methane emissions from onshore oil and natural gas production can be reduced by 40% by 2018 at a cost that's the equivalent of just 1 cent per 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas. And this was concluded in a newly released study because a company came up with a camera that can actually use infrared technology to spot the leaks at fracking sites so that they can go in and fix the equipment because it's often caused simply by leaky gaskets or loose bolts. And moving on to her second secondary claim. First off, the affirmative themselves said that seismic activity has been associated more with wastewater disposal than it has with fracking. As a matter of fact, seismic activity from fracking has rarely been shown to occur at all, and when it does happen, it's on a very small scale. According to John Wibby, from an article in the Yale Climate Connections, we've had tens of thousands of wells drilled over many years, and there are practically 0 incidents in which operations-induced seismic effects have impacted citizens, generally because these are magnitudes of less, the earthquakes themselves have a magnitude less than 4, and it's at that point where it can actually harm citizens in the local environment. And as I said, according to Robert Jackson, in an annual review of the environmental resources, many more felt earthquakes have accompanied wastewater disposal than have accompanied hydraulic fracturing. And that just goes to show that their focus and blaming the earthquakes on fracking is not accurate. And not only that, but the focus would need to be on other areas where this might actually be occurring. Thank you.